We had a failed test for one of our clients that ended up making them $100,000 in extra revenue for the year. And the lesson here is that if you think you have a good test, if you feel it in your gut, you've built a hypothesis, then it's often worth going back and iterating on that test a few times until you find the secret combination of ingredients that really clicks with customers. There's nothing more disheartening of coming up with a really good test where you kind of think to yourself, man, this is going to absolutely kill it. Like, I can see the problem. I know that this is what customers are struggling with. And then you run the test and it fails. But often you're super close to getting it right. And we see this all the time with our tests. The first one will fail, and then maybe the second or third one will strike gold. And often they strike pretty hard. So I'll take you through this experiment. So the hypothesis that we had is that if we prompt a customer to buy a related product, so an upsell or a cross-sell, when they're adding their product to the cart, then it will end up increasing the average order value because they're much more likely to purchase at that point. They're in buying mode. They've overcome all of their internal objections about buying, and they see this much cheaper item and it's related to what they're buying. So say they're buying wet weather gear, they see some wet weather gloves, and they're like, great, this is exactly what I need. But the results came back and we were a little bit confused because lots of people were clicking on the products. So they obviously were looking at them and they were convinced that this is a good product. They were going and checking the products out, looking at the product page, but the results of that were that the conversion rate dropped almost 3%, average order value dropped almost 3%, and revenue dropped by 5.6%, which is not good. But the tricky thing for us was that people were clicking on the products and they were playing around with the color variants. So the products were right, they were interested in them, but they weren't purchasing them. So what we devised by watching a number of session recordings and looking at the click maps and heat maps and some user journey funnels is that we were accidentally taking people away from purchasing. So they were really close to checking out. Like they were ready to go and make a purchase, or at least go through the checkout process. And they were getting to seeing these upsells and being like, that looks great, these gloves are awesome, but I'm not sure, I have really small hands, I have really large hands, I wonder if this is a one size fits all. I'm going to go read about the product and see if this is going to be a good fit for me. They'd dive off into the product page and then they wouldn't come back, or some of them wouldn't come back anyway. So we were inadvertently pulling people away from the checkout flow to try and give them the option to make another purchase, which is the wrong way to do it. So we went back to the drawing board and built a new hypothesis, which essentially said that if they're in that same situation and they have the option to pick a size and a color, then they'll end up converting. Because now their biggest objection the shopper had, they were ready to make an impulse purchase, but they weren't sure that if they got the thing, it would fit them, which is a pretty straightforward, logical explanation. And when we implemented this new design, so you can see it over here on the right, if I get my head out of the way, all we added was a couple of drop downs, so size and color. So just kind of giving the customers the option to make sure that even though it's an impulse purchase, it's going to end up being the right fit for them. They don't need to read too much more about these products, really. Like, it's a glove, it's a hat. You don't need a lot of information. Most people own these products already. So what we found is from this small change, so just adding those two drop-down options to give customers the opportunity to make a purchase, the conversion rate increased by 9.7%. So if you remember the negative increase from the first time round, so we've almost had a 12% swing in the opposite direction. Average order value increased by 2.6%, and the total revenue per customer improved to 12.6%. So what we can deduce is there are a couple of objections to buying at all times. People want to make sure that they're going to get something that fits them, and it's going to look good, so they're not just getting a color option that they don't want. But a bigger deduction is that you just need to test more times. If something fails and you have a gut feeling that it's something that is a problem for customers, then you just need to try a different variation, sidestep a little bit, try another approach, and then go back to the drawing board, because it's often the third or fourth time that you try something with a little bit of a different combination that it ends up clicking.